Hey community, this month's video jumps right into a presentation as it was already going in because we forgot to hit the record button. We still got most of what Nikhil had to say. Hope you guys still enjoy it, and feel free to reach out if you want to connect and hear more about his app. Thank you, and hope to see you next month.
Produce and distribute books. Print books are super costly. Ebooks, audio, it's still, it's expensive. People want their margin, but it's still pretty expensive. So as a writer, you have to share your cut with somebody who's helping you get your book out in the hands of the user. So that's a big deal. The third thing is books are really low margin business. So it has a really long tail. If you look at like how much money you can make, only few books really do really well, okay? Everything else is just tiny, tiny, tiny. If you're trying to make a lot of money on your books and you want to write a lot, you got to write a lot of books and you got to sell those books so many times that all these little pennies make $1 for you. That makes it very, very hard for somebody to do well as a writer, okay? Fourth problem, writers love to write, they're not marketers. They don't like to market. And people have expected writers to self-promote because publishers don't want to do it. And if you try to self-publish, good luck trying to do that and self-promote and market, like constantly on it all the time. It's very, very hard because writers, very few writers really love getting out in front of, standing in front of audience and talking and promoting their books. They really love to write. So you take all these four things together, and the problem is they want to write, but they're not making enough money doing it. So their margins have plummeted. How many of you here, let's do a very quick show of hands, how many of you here actually read books? It has to be one, doesn't matter. Okay, perfect. How many of that is print, like paper? Very good. How many of that is ebooks? Okay. How many of that is audio? Okay. So ebooks and audios are doing really well. People love to consume content on the go, so they're listening to books while driving, while they're out there. A lot of people also love to read a book, paper book. They want to sit in the corner on a nice evening or whatever they want to do. That's their way out. Pandemic saved publishing industry. 8% jump in a publishing industry during pandemic. That kind of stuff doesn't happen for publishing, okay? But everybody was buying books. Writers did well, publishers did well. They sold a lot because people needed something to read. So books inherently have a lot of value. Writers love it, readers love it. You just have to figure out a way to put the two people together, okay? So that fundamentally forms the basis of our process. Now earlier I asked you ebooks. How many here use Kindle? All right. How many of you are aware that when you start reading a book on Kindle, and you don't finish it, the writer only gets paid for the pages you read? Oh. Well, streamers only get paid for the amount of content they get streamed, and it's pennies, thousands of, a dollar. So writers, so Kindle has basically, you see that red arrow going down? Kindle's not making writers a lot of money. Now, if you bought the book, you pay the full price, or whatever the price was. Writer will make a chunk of it. Not through that. Spotify, for example, has a pooled income group. Similar story. Some publishers do well, others not so much. So if you only listen to a few minutes of books, and you, for whatever reason, you stop listening, that writer is not getting paid. So imagine that the way the technology is evolving and making it easier for consumers to really consume stuff, you have to really not pay the people who actually create the content. That's the core problem, and it's really bad. Next slide, please. So our solution was that we wanted to build something for writers that allows them to really save time and money. So they can focus on writing good books as frequently as they want and as much or as little as they want. So what we ended up doing is we ended up building a platform that generally writers don't have access to. It's very expensive to have this kind of stuff. There are some very easy to use capabilities here. First of all, when you're a writer, you want to write whenever that idea occurs. Because you want to write it down. Standing in a grocery line and something occurs, write it down. Waiting for to pick up your kids, write it down. Walking a dog and something happens, write it down. Driving, and something pops in your head, you want to write it down, but you're not going to do that. So we wanted to build something that allows you to use text messaging interface to actually talk to your own platform. That's a capability that's super helpful. We wanted them to have access to manage their own projects, manage their submissions, know that somebody got it. How frequently do you send an email and not know what they're doing? Because they are not getting response back. So you want a way to track whether they are actually reading your content. We wanted to give them a very protective environment to use generative AI to do research. Okay? Everywhere, everybody uses it in some form or another, except when you are a writer and you try to write something really good, you need to be able to research your subject. And you need data sets, and you need high quality prompts to know what to ask so you get good response back. So we are providing them not only access to generative AI, but research data sets and prompts that they can use to actually get the content. Very easy to confuse correlation and causation in anything you try to do. But how do you know what's the best way to do it? We have a feature for that. Next one, please. Two more things. This thing, so it's coming soon, we are working on it. When you are a writer and you have a draft ready and you want feedback, today you have to wait for months to get any high quality feedback. We want to crush that into hours. So we have a MARCIE model that reads the book and produces on one page an entire story. One page. Soup to nuts. Start to beginning, you know exactly what is happening in your story, and then you find gaps. You compare it against top sellers. So now you know where you stand. That is very helpful. We're going to launch that soon. And then very soon, we're going to actually launch an offline feature. We're going to help buy the backlist. So a backlist essentially is a book that's not on the front list. Well, the front list book is the one that's about a year old. Then people kind of stop worrying about it. They don't promote it. They want to move on to the next big thing. Well, backlist has money to be made. So we want to help those authors buy access to the backlist titles. We'll promote it, and we'll work with them to turn their backlisted title into interesting audiobooks and ebooks so that they can actually distribute it and make money in ways that other publishers are not doing. So while we are doing a lot of cool things online in AI, we are also going very traditional, investing in authors and giving them access to a promotion engine that just promotes them. So that's our go-to-market approach for helping writers hopefully keep doing what they love, and we can help them save time and money and make money. That's it. Thank you.
So is there like any ask Brandon that you're looking for help?
Yeah, I mean, would love to hear if you guys have any feedback or any questions. If you spotted a gap in here, would love to hear that.
So I have a question. The story is still out about intellectual property, things generated by AI. How are you able to take copyright with an AI generated and make it protected? Because right now, there's no legislation on it. There's no intellectual property protection. It's pretty much public domain.
Yeah.
So how are you addressing that?
Yeah, good question. So what we are doing is today, if you can actually do it today, but if you pay them a lot of money, the Gen AI tool developers like ChatGPT or anybody else, if you pay them a lot of money, they will give you a protected environment in which they will not use your data to train their models. So that's how you protect your copyright. How many writers want to spend several $100s to have access to that? So part of our generative AI capability is to give them that option at fraction of the dollar. So that way they can maintain privacy and do what they want to do and then move on, right? They're writers, they want to write. They don't want to just sit in front of a chat window and just chit chat with a dumb algorithm. It sounds smart, I work with it, I know it's pretty dumb.
So is this going to be a membership based?
It's going to be subscription based. So they will pay a yearly subscription and then keep renewing, hopefully.
Okay.
And then these two are actually paper. So if you want help with promotions, we have to get into legal contracts to make sure that we are doing all the right things to promote your books, including exclusive right to promote and distribute and royalty sharing. This one is going to be per, because how many times do you really want to have your draft be audited by or reviewed by AI? When you're done, you're done. You don't want to move on. You don't want to keep paying for that. So these are paper. That's the thinking, that it will stick better. The earlier one, very affordable. Pricing range is going to be very, very affordable. It's 4 or 5 cups of coffee and you're done for the year.
feel like authors seem like a narrow market. Would you offer a version of this writing platform geared towards students and educators and students?
Yeah, and so this platform and the set of features that were developed was for essentially for long form content. There are a lot of software out there, a lot of tools for like short, like copy and like simple, like 2-page essays and things like that. So there is a lot out there. It's available to anybody who wants to use it that they think is valuable. One of the ideas I was provided recently is that, you know, a lot of kids are trying to get into college, they want to write essays, but they don't know how best to write it. So if they give you their life story, can you help them figure out how best to present it? So we have the research data and prompt has some of that stuff in it, so you can actually use it and write something or find inspiration and then write your own essay and work with it. So students, college students, high school students, parents, professionals who write a lot, it's available to anybody. There is no limit per se. Yeah.
Now, I work with a couple publishers, and you're absolutely right. The authors hate dealing with all this back-end material. Is there a goal that this is ultimately a platform that publishers will be involved with, or is this to replace the publishers?
Publishers will be involved. And so the feature that I talked about where the AI gives you feedback, we also want to use that as a way to get publishers interested in upcoming high quality books that they would want to discover. And by looking at high quality drafts, we can help them introduce to the writers, and hopefully that's a way for them to, you know, writers to do well with publishers. Because even connecting with publishers is hard work. So whatever underlying statement, whatever it means for us to make writers successful. Why am I so passionate to it? My wife's a writer. And after she's published 10 books, so I've seen her journey. It's painful to be a writer, but she loves it. That's like, I got to do something about this problem. So it's all, you know, so far labor of love, blood, sweat, and tears. You keep going at it. Hopefully you get it right one of these days. Yeah.
I have like two questions. So, like the first one will be like, is everyone eligible like for doing like the writing work here, or like only like the professional authors can publish their work? Because I personally use like the similar application. Everybody's actually could type their own story or whatever they want to publish, and like you can also check the views. So I'm wondering like, it's like, because in real life, if I go to the bookstore, I couldn't write a book and just to send like the people to publish it, right? So you have to sort of become like a little bit well known, or like someone has to like observe your work for publish it. But what about these platforms? Is everybody can do their work like YouTube channel, or like only like the some professional one can do their own work?
Like publishing pipeline. Like, is there a way when they're using your application?
So the feature that I talked about where you have your entire story on one page, that's essentially meant to create pipeline for writers. So even if you're not a professional writer, but you have a really good book and you want to see if you can connect with somebody who can help you get your book in front of publishers, you want to use that as a way to get people on. Yeah.
When can I use this?
So it's available right now. It's on a sort of beta testing draft mode, some features. Others we're going to launch soon, but we haven't put pricing model on it yet. It's going through a change right now. So very soon we're going to launch it. It's going to have pricing model in place. Our distribution strategies, we're going to basically have referrals and affiliates. So let people use it. If they love it, let them sell it, and we'll share revenue. I love building this stuff and helping writers.
I'm curious about which is the competitive advantage of this engagement compared with any type of generative AI. Because right now I'm using like any kid can write a book using any type of generative AI, especially right now that OpenAI just launched the last version of O1. So at the end, like, this could be replaceable in the future.
Are we all replaceable at some point? Probably, in some ways. But I'll tell you what happens with writing. So we use generative AI for work, and it's called context switching. Like, how much can it hold in its memory to help you sort of have a conversation? Right? A book is really large context switching. Is it possible at some point in the future that it can hold the entire book in its memory and do all this stuff and create a really awesome novel without losing, you know, content and the context of what the story is? We don't know. Technology, anything is possible with technology. So today we don't think that, a reader, if you give them AI generated content and the content is choppy, they will stop reading the book. They will know that this is mess. Writer spends a lot of time polishing the book to make sure that the story is really awesome. And if you try to pitch an AI generated content, it's not going to, number one, do well. Number two, there are a lot of publishers and others, they are not even accepting AI generated content. They want to work with writers. They don't want to work with an algorithm. So there is a little bit of that. And we also have, the feature that I talked about where our AI actually reads and gives you the entire story on one page, that's our competitive advantage as well. Because that's very unique to MARCIE, that doesn't exist anywhere. ChatGPT can do this.
So we're gonna have to save the questions for afterwards.
Yeah. Just one more quick question, so I have to think about.
Here, we gotta save it.
Oh, okay.
We gotta save it.
All right. Okay.
But yeah, please feel free to come to me after and give them feedback or any questions. We'll have much time afterwards. Thank you so much.
Thank you for all your questions.
Are you good at that? I'm good. We're good. I got you.
Oh, goodness.
No, we're good.
Great.
That's why I'm here.
Thanks. Anyone needs a drink, you can grab one while we get this loaded. Yeah.
Is it me or you?
Internet.
Internet. Do you have the online Wi-Fi?
Carolyn, the Wi-Fi has it's right next to her.
Online public. Here, number 2 online. Sweet.
Alright. Hi. Thanks to everyone for being here. I'm Carolyn, this is Chad. We're going to walk you through a brief presentation of CoPivot. The deck, can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, the deck is specifically tailored with the audience being largely entrepreneurs. So just to give you a little bit of context on that, I'll go through the presentation and then Chad will give a brief demo. Obviously we may not get through all the questions, so feel free to find us after for questions. All right, so we are CoPivot. We enable entrepreneurs to be more successful. So the problem that we found is that many businesses start and often fail. By the first year, 20% of businesses fail. By year 5, 50% fail. And that got us interested in, well, what's currently available? This is not a comprehensive list, but these are common resources that entrepreneurs look to understand where they are in their journey and to figure out how to move forward. As you can see, hopefully you can read it, it's a little small. As you can see, there's some common problems here. So some of these resources are dependent on humans, which means that if there's only one person working, there's only one person available. Some of them are not personalized, many of them are just templates, they don't provide education throughout, and as some of you may know, incubators and accelerators often have a very small acceptance rate, and so getting to a point where you can actually get into one of those is even harder. So many of these are just not very accessible. And the reason this matters is because small businesses play a huge role in our United States GDP. And there's over 32 million small businesses just in the United States, and that rate is growing over 1 million year over year, which is more recently since COVID. And as we know, the larger segments of that are in Gen Z. Is that the youngest group, right? Gen Z. I know, I'm old. I'm like a millennial. That, as well as women.
So if we take a step back, why do businesses actually fail in the first place? Because this is where we want to solve the problem. We found two key issues, and there's data against this. I'm just skipping some of them. One is lack of product market fit. It's around 44%. Another is due to cash flow issues. Does any of this surprise anyone? They sound pretty common, right? So if you look at the overlap there, what we want to do is see what are common resources or things that should be available to all entrepreneurs to sort of work through those problems. And the three are highlighted, which we are focused on as CoPivot, which I'll dive into. So what is actually needed to help entrepreneurs at scale? We need to provide them foundational education, community, which includes networking opportunities such as this, and personalized resources to enable them to successfully move on into their next step in their business building journey. So what we actually offer and are in the works of building is a web-based application, and we're calling ourselves your business advisor. What we want to do is for anyone coming in to the web app, we will prompt you through a business stage assessment to see where you are in your journey. Oftentimes people think they're ready for funding, but they really haven't done all these other critical steps. So we're going to take them a step back and say, you need to do A, B, C, so that way when you want to get funding, you're actually prepared. That is a free assessment, and then we are also working on cohort education. So let's say you're in the ideation stage, which is where we're focused right now, and you want to explore an idea, learn how to speak with customers, which is really critical. We have a cohort to actually walk you through that process. Also offer one-on-one mentorship, events, and the exciting part is for anyone who is participatory in CoPivot, we provide you early product access. So that could be really fun when you see the demo. I love that, yes. From a revenue perspective, we're complex. We're a little bit of a B2B2C. Sorry about that. So the primary direction that we will move forward with once we're publicly available, because we're in the testing stages, we will license our software and our content. Currently, we are working through getting funding through events, subscriptions, partnerships, and sponsorships, which I'll talk about in just a minute. So traction. We are currently in Launch New York as an entrepreneur in residence. It's been almost 3 months. We've been receiving a lot of really great support from them. I was nominated as the Tech Rebel finalist for the Tech Rochester 2024. Thanks, Mike. We are accepted into the NVIDIA Inception program, which I think maybe has 18,000 companies. And in 2023, we placed in the New York State Business Plan competition, third place in the category Learn, Work, and Play. We have also hosted numerous events, supported a lot of different businesses, and we've had a lot of different partnerships. So as you can see on the bottom, those are just a few of our current partners that we've already worked with in some capacity. So where are we right now? From April to current, we have been working on beta testing, and actually some of you have walked through these experiences and already given feedback, so thank you. We currently have 3 things. So I mentioned the business stage assessment, which then correlates to the workbook, which includes tasks. And then we have the generative AI pitch deck, which we'll be talking through in a minute. And currently, this September, we are launching a really exciting pilot program with Balisano Institute. They are allowing for some of their students to come through our cohort program, and they're going through the ideation piece. So we're diving into how to actually conduct customer research, develop a script, all those things, and also give mentorship to essentially test and learn and see what we can learn and if we're heading in the right direction that adds value. I'm going to come back to the pitch deck in just a second, and I just wanted to give a little bit more context on our team. Already introduced ourselves, but I did want to give a shout out. We have a lot of really great mentors, specifically Large we've been working with Arpita and Dan from Launch New York, and there's so many people in the audience that have also been really supportive, so thank you to all of you. And let me go back to give you the demo.
Yeah. So we're going to make this a little interactive.
gonna start with just putting my name.
Could you zoom in a little? Just so it's visible.
So you lose the chat box.
Alright.
Can everyone see like reasonably well? Okay, so essentially, this is a conversation to help you build a pitch deck. It's going to take your responses and it will generate the pitch deck for you, and then we'll send that to Carolyn, who will make sure everything looks good because it's still early. And then you'll have a wonderful pitch deck. It is, of course, as with so many AI generated things, like resumes and cover letters, it's far more likely you're going to get. You're going to be able to avoid little nuances that people who tend to turn people off. So I'm just going to start with my name for the first question. You guys want me to read?
Yes,
out loud?
read it as you go.
Okay.
I think that's helpful.
You guys want
I
me to
saw
read
some
my
people
notes?
squinting.
Alright, so thank you for participating in the CoPitch beta. The CoPivot beta. I'm CoPitch, your accelerated pitch coach. I'm going to ask you a few questions so that we can get you rolling with a high impact pitch deck. Let's start off easy. So what's your name? My name is Chad. And it's going to reply, great. To have you here, Chad. It's always exciting to talk with entrepreneurs about their new ventures. Let's start with the basics. What is the name of your company? So if anyone has like
Old man.
Bold Band, okay.
Oh, I love
This
this.
is perfect.
We're doing it.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
I'm so excited. Thank you.
I love that.
Technically old wristband, but it's not.
Bold Band. That's an intriguing name. It certainly grabs attention right away. Now that we know the name, I'm curious to dive deeper into the core of your business. What is the specific problem that Bold Band is aiming to solve? Can you also tell us about the pain point or challenge you identified in the market that led you to create the business?
Online dating is a pain point, and I'm taking online dating offline and putting it back online.
Online dating.
Data.
Dating.
Yeah, typing on.
I mean, that is
typing on-
very
typing
nice.
on-
Another company.
Alright, I'm just gonna leave it
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
fine. Online dating, pain point.
That's a really interesting concept, Chad. Taking online dating offline certainly addresses a pain point many people experience. I'd like to dig a bit deeper, if you don't mind. Why specifically are you passionate about solving this problem?
Because it is my problem, and 50% of people who are single are not online dating because they're tired of it. So there's a giant market for it.
And just for a little context, while we're typing through these answers, a lot of this has improved over time with feedback we receive. So Chad has made it a lot more conversational, and the speed is a lot faster. So for you, anyone seeing it
Yeah, if I did it in the past.
I know it's
Might be a little bit.
big change.
So I appreciate you sharing that personal connection, Chad. It's clear this is an issue that resonates with you. Now let's get to the heart of your solution. What is the big idea or innovative approach that Bold Band is bringing to the table?
The opposite of a wedding ring, a wristband that says I'm single, ready to mingle.
Short and sweet, I love that. And kind of also what's happening on the back end, we are collecting your responses and analyzing and writing them so that when they get output, they're improved. So they're a little bit more full sentence and or we leave certain information out that's not relevant.
We turn into points that would go on a slide, like both. So we're going to stop right now because
It'll take a
as
few
much
more
fun as
minutes.
it is to interview people.
But ultimately,
Can we keep that session live so she can?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. How about we
Yeah.
pass you the computer and you can finish it and we can show you the results maybe after you go or something?
Yeah.
'Cause it takes another few minutes. Unless we're open to that. But I don't know how
I
we're
feel
doing
like-
time.
Or do you want us to?
Are we-
No, I mean, you guys are in the middle of a demo, so I was gonna cut you guys off. So I was
Okay.
But yeah, I like that idea just so you can get to questions now.
Yep, great.
Because you probably have a few. I can start your the fun.
Yes! Love that. Great quote. Great.
Or you want to do it after?
Yeah, we can do questions after.
Okay. We're gonna postpone questions until after Max goes, and then you can do questions. The post it.
Alright, cool. I have an actual presentation, and I know everybody is gonna get a little impatient. I don't want to take too long, so I'm gonna fly through some stuff. And I gotta do this. Hold on. Put this on the other side. Put this here. Of course, it has to go to the other side. That's fine. This, of course, so I'm managing. Oh, sweet. Come on. Yes. Sweet. Okay. Who knows how ChatGPT works? Raise your hand if you know how it works. Everybody knows how it works? Well, this is going to be very boring for you. I'm sorry. Okay. I have a company. My name is Max Irwin. I have a company called Max.io. I do AI consulting. I've been in the AI business for a long time. I also am building a product called Lumi, and I have a conference called Flower City AI. The first one was in December 2023. Doing it again. There's a discount code here. Come to the conference, submit a talk. It was awesome last year. It's going to be awesome this year. Okay, so the hype cycle. Everybody's seen the hype cycle. A lot of the general public is right here. They're skiing down to the trough of disillusionment. If you've been in AI for a while, like me and Chad and some other people, you're like over here. You got a couple broken legs and you kind of made it, and you're just doing your thing, right? So that's fun. What is AI? We start with data. Data is important. It's the most important thing. Basically, AI is machines learning from data. So you define a task and a metric. You say, I want the machine to do this, and I'm going to measure it with that. So that's two very important things. So some examples. Task is predict the next token in a paragraph. The metric is, was it predicted successfully? Called this self-supervised learning. There's a lot of different learning mechanisms. We train software to learn the task from the data to improve the metric. We call the trained result a model. Then you can use the model to perform the task on previously unseen data. The outcome may or may not be successful. Your model is a tool and it requires an operator, it's not something that's running amok. It always needs somebody that's controlling it, right? And you are accountable to that. That's important. There is accountability with AI, you're not just handing it over to a machine. Other examples of data, numeric, you got climate, housing prices, text, you got language, code, laws, photos, graphics, medical imagery, speech, music, sound effects, film, animations, clips, PDFs, PowerPoints, JSON, OnCal, whatever. If it exists digitally in a machine, it's data, and you have enough of it, you can train a model to give it an appropriate task and metric. All models are wrong. Some models are useful. This is a quote from the 70s by a British statistician named George Box. It still holds today. No model is perfect. It will not perform the task perfectly. This is very, very key. The amount of data and the way that you train a model will affect the quality of the model. All right, generative AI. That's what everybody's talking about these days. How to use generative AI. We construct a prompt, which are instructions for the model. The model takes the prompt as input and it generates output. Different models provide different responses. And if you change the prompt, the same model will produce different output. Often, if the output changes, even if you don't change the prompt, you give the same prompt to the same model twice, you get a different response. Here's an example. This is ChatGPT on the left. This is Gemini on the right. One prompt, different responses. It's a tiny font.
I asked it about common city ordinances that have to do with lawn care and home upkeep. That's the answer from both of those. They're different. Okay, so now we have some images over here. So this is the progression of image technology. I trained image models back in like the 2018, 2017. These are much newer and much more fancy. Everybody's using this stuff. This is DALL-E version 2 is September 2022. DALL-E version 3, 2023, September. Now Mid-Journey. There's still, like, you can see this little nonsense. You can't see my cursor. Over here, this basket isn't shaped right. Still a little ways to go on this. There's diffusion models. You have noise and you learn to denoise the model. You have autoregressive models, which you predict the next pixel. And you have contrastive learning models. You align the text and image space. This prompt was used for all 3 of these pictures. And I generate them every year to see how things progress. We saw this slide before. 300 billion tokens were used to train GPT-3, which was released in 2021. 2020, sorry. GPT-4, released in 2023, used 13 trillion tokens. A token is about a word, sometimes it's smaller than a word, for all intents and purposes. So 13 trillion tokens was used to train GPT-4 compared to 300 billion tokens. So that's roughly a 50 times increase. The last time I gave a talk like this, Sora was kind of newish. Sora generates video from text, so that's pretty cool. You can check out Sora from OpenAI. Now today, there's this thing called O1. I'm going to talk about what O1 is. This just dropped this morning, and that was fun, not doing work and learning how O1 works, so I can tell you all about it today. AI moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you might miss it. Anybody know where this quote is from? Ferris Butler, he said that, list of models on his chest. Nobody's missing it. You can't get away from it. Please don't do this. Don't put AI slop on the internet. This sucks. This is like some crappy Reddit post that somebody generated something automatically and then they put it on Reddit. Please don't spend your time on this. We don't want it. Okay, there isn't just OpenAI. These are really tiny fonts, but we got closed models are like Gemini and this is from Google. We got Claude and Sonnet is from Anthropic. And we got open models, so Meta, Facebook, they make this thing called Llama. Then you got another company, this French company called Mistral, that produced the Mistral model and the Mistral series. Then you have all these other people doing stuff, Microsoft's in there, and hundreds of others, thousands of others. Okay, those are open, you can just download the weights and you can use them if you have a fancy computer.
So where's yours?
I don't have one. How ChatGPT works. I don't spend my time on that. You ask Chat, he knows how to do it. Before you know ChatGPT, you got to know how GPT works. GPT is a generative, pre-trained transformer. This acronym has some meaning behind it. We get as much good content from the internet as possible. We predict the next token in the sequence is the task. And the metric is, did you predict the next word correctly? We said that before. How GPT completes text. You give it a prompt, one token at a time. What is environmental management? Environmental management is, and then it comes up with the management of the interaction and impact and da 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 da. And it'll go forever until it decides to stop. Eventually there's a stop token in there, and the stop token is part of the thing that it predicts. GPT is what is known as a large language model, or an LLM, if you see that acronym flying around somewhere. An LLM has some capabilities and some limitations. So models perform well for data that it has been exposed to during training. That is very important. Models typically don't perform well for new unseen data, also known as zero-shot, unless it's learned similar cases. Since GPT has been trained on trillions of words from the internet, there are a few public cases, in English at least, where the data is new, and a lot of what we call high resource languages like Chinese and French, Spanish, things like that. Some low resource languages like Armenian is not so much. So that's important too. But public data, when it's in a high resource language, GPT's seen a lot of it and knows a lot. Private or highly specialized domain data is usually new to the model, potentially impacting accuracy. So if you have private content that's in a database somewhere and the model has not learned it or seen from it, it doesn't know what to do with it. Any new data that is created after the model was trained will be new and therefore also zero-shot. So here's a fun thing that I did this morning. I asked GPT who the current Democratic president candidate was, and it said Joe Biden is the Democratic president candidate. no, that's wrong. And there's a little caveat. It says, I don't really know because I'm just a model and I don't have the news. So that happened, and you throw that in the garbage and you move on. Okay, so you got reinforcement learning. So once you have a GPT model,
So you ask me who's going to win the election?
you have just that snippet of data was wrong. So I checked. So reinforcement learning. Once you have to start with a predictive model, and then ChatGPT is trained in a further step. So you have an existing GPT model. Then you have another task. The next task is predict the entire response text for chat. And then you have more data. The data is chat data. And then you have a chat metric. The chat metric is like, do people like it or do they not like it? And that's human responses. And then you train this with this data, and you eventually get ChatGPT, which we all know and love. I said that, and okay. What is the quality of the overall result given the chat prompt? So that's kind of like the guiding metric for reinforcement learning for ChatGPT. Okay, understanding reinforcement learning in 30 seconds. So predicting the next token is nice. If I'm doing that, I predict a lot of tokens and I do it one at a time. Now imagine I'm playing a video game. I can move Mario, and I can move him a little bit to the left, I can move him to the right, I can jump, and I can do stuff. But I can learn to do that one step at a time. But how do I complete a whole level? I have to go through a lot of complex steps to be able to do that, right? So reinforcement learning helps guide that. So similar to predicting the token, you make one move right or left, your score goes up a little. If you predict an entire chat successfully, that's like completing the level successfully. Reinforcement learning has training features. So Mario, the score goes up, the X coordinate goes up, you're moving to the right, and the time is minified. ChatGPT, you might have some signals like people give a thumbs up, the tokens are clean, like you don't have not safe for work stuff in there. That's important. And the length is minified, which isn't always the case. ChatGPT loves to ramble on endlessly, drives me crazy. And then you got this little thing there. I don't know how that got in there. That's mine. Okay, so most generative tasks are subjective and therefore difficult to evaluate. So if you do a translation, you got like, hi Mario, translate to this to Armenian, but should this be a formal greeting? Should it be casual? What do I do? Code, write some code. Is it nice? Is it secure? Yada yada, subjective. Summarization, give me the gist of a novel, Great Expectations. Is it short or long? There's a key plot aspect that you left out? Subjective. Abstract question answering. Why did Bit move to London was the protagonist of the book. All of these motivations, would I have answered the same way? Maybe not. Subjective. Okay, so how do you measure a subjective task? You can't, because it takes a long time and you have to get a lot of stuff going on. So you use a proxy, which is an objective measurement, to compare models, to see which models are better than one another. So you have these benchmarks, and you can't really read this, it's really tiny. This is from the OpenLLM leaderboard. You have this one is human eval Python, pass at 1. So this is like, does the model pass a coding challenge, an objective coding challenge? The answer is going to be right or wrong. So that's an objective measurement. Then you can have Hello Swag, which is a multiple choice question. Do you give the right answer from a multiple choice? That is objective, not subjective. So you can actually ascribe values to these, and you can compare models between one another, and you can see which are best at which tasks. So that's cool. Evaluation of a zero-shot example. So all that data is public. How do you evaluate your own data? When ChatGPT first came out, I was like, hey, I got to do my taxes. How do I classify all these bank statements? I'm lazy, and I got to do this. So I gave it all this garbage, and it said, oh, yeah, I think these things go here for my tax return. Classified as my 1040 Schedule C. And it did terribly. It gave me a 56%. I graded this manually, and I was like, this is garbage, I'm out of here. So now we got to counter hallucinations also. Hallucinations, it makes stuff up, right? Best practice is there's a setting, and we call it temperature when you're accessing a model. Temperature is a number between 0 and 1. 1 is like, how creative is it? It's going to give you a lot of random stuff. 0 is it'll try to be as consistent as possible. When you're using AI in production, unless you're trying to generate a lot of weird stuff all the time, over and over, you set it to 0. You want consistency when people are using models and they have expectations of consistency. So use 0 as the temperature, and use factual grounding. Factual grounding is you provide content, you provide background facts that you know from your private data, and say, hey, I have this information. Can you do something with it? Don't just make it up. do something with this information that I've given you. So you also ask it to give it citations and say, well, where did this come from in the text that I've given you? So you can do that one at a time, or you can use this thing called retrieval augmented generation. I spend a lot of time in this domain, where you actually run a search in the background, you take all the search results, you put it into a prompt, and you say, hey, give me the answer. And it looks through the search results, and then it gives you the prompt, it gives you the answer with citations to the stuff that you give it. It's a very powerful pattern. Here's an example. So this is from the Brave search, and everybody uses this right now. You go to do a search, and it gives you this blob of text at the top, and it gives you little citations. That's retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, or Raj, as I love to call it, because RAG sounds weird. Okay, so what's this O1 thing again? O1, they came out with this thing. I read the blogs, and I dug into it, and I was, being on the internet as an internet guy, like, what's this all about, man? Oh my God. Learning to reason, that's what they said it was. Learning to reason. What is learning to reason? So, I don't know if you can read this, but I have this fun question up here. How many R's are in arrivederci? That's a fun question. Well, it tells me that there's one R in arrivederci. So obviously it's stupid. So I gotta tell it, no, it's not. Think about it step by step, count the letters in the thing, and then do it again. So it goes through this, it lists all the letters, and then it says, oh look, there's actually 3 R's in it, that's fun. So that's called chain of thought prompting. It's a technique that people use to do these types of things to kind of make sure the model works a little bit better. So chain of thought, you can just kind of do like this, think step by step in your prompt right now, and you can give some further instructions, and it'll go through this process for you. So it makes LLMs kind of calculate before responding, because it generates all this stuff, and then it looks back on what it generated, and then it gives you the summarization. It's kind of a continuation of RAG a little bit, where it's creating its own facts, and then it's looking back on the facts that it created, and then it's giving you a summarization of the facts. So this is a manual process, and it's annoying to try to tell the model to do this every single time. So O1 aims to fix this, and it's trained to do it internally. So all this chain of thought stuff is now in the O1 model, happening behind the scenes, and it'll do this for you. And it's been trained so no more manual think step by step. It does all this. It's more expensive than traditional models because it's still generating all those steps, right? Companies, they charge you like per token that you input and per token that is generated. So it's still generating all this stuff, but internally in the model, so it's just gonna cost more money for a regular prompt. So we've got some prices here. So the latest GPT-4o model, the input is $2.50 for 1 million tokens. Output is $10 for 1 million tokens. This O1 preview input is $15 for 1 million tokens input and $60 for 1 million tokens output. So it has to generate all this stuff internally. You don't get that for free. They call them reasoning tokens, but it's really the same thing as completion tokens or output tokens. They just kind of named it differently. They suck at naming things like the GPT-3, 3.5, 4, 4.0, 4.0 mini, 3.5 turbo, O1, O1 preview, what the hell? Okay, so this was just released today.
O1 is their attempt at a different nomenclature.
I guess so. It's just released today and I don't have access, and that's the presentation, some closing advice. Find your way to the plateau of productivity, use this stuff, learn what breaks it. Don't give up, stick with it. It'll work out for you. You just got to keep trying. Don't trust verify. This stuff will just give you garbage. You have to verify it. You have to make sure you know what you're doing. A common technique here also is you ask multiple models. If you have a production system that's automated, you can ask GPT, you can ask Claude, and you can ask Gemini and say, hey, which of you, give me this answer. And then you say, hey, I got these 3 answers. And you ask each of them, which one got it right? And they might argue with each other, and that's fun when bots argue with each other. Okay, build safely and responsibly. Tread carefully, and you are accountable. If you use AI in your production system, it's on you, it's not on the model, it's not on anybody else. Come to the conference, it's going to be awesome. We're going to have a lot of talks. Submit a talk, buy a ticket, bring your friends, tell your friends. It's grassroots, it's nonprofit, no money is being made here. Tickets are cheap, it's $40. The code for today is SG912, Startup Grind, September 12th. Really hard to remember. So use that as $10 off. Again, we don't really make any money. That buys lunch and like the little theater. It's going to be over at the little theater on December 4th. Please come and tell your friends. And that's all. Thanks a lot. Questions? Sure. Who wants to ask questions? Or should we save the questions? Are you done with your thing over there?
Oh, I closed it and it didn't remember.
Okay, questions? Yes.
Talk about like AI, training the models and running models. So like when we interact with like ChatGPT, that model is already off in sales, right? Like we're interacting with something that another company built, trained, and was providing to us. Right?
Yes.
So when you go to like talk about like improving the results from it, right? Those are the kind of the tactics you talked about at the end of like.
Yes, you can improve the results we go into. So the model has been trained to, again, predict tokens and give good responses based on human feedback, right, overall. The variations of what it can do are, they're finite, but they're out there. There's a lot of stuff, right? Because it's basically the world's knowledge, as much of the world's knowledge as they can gather, and then as many chats as they can gather. And there's billions of chats there. So it's been trained pretty well. So when you provide private data, unless it's in some weird thing that it's really never seen before, like let's say you invent your own language and it doesn't make any sense, it's probably going to do okay with anything that you throw at it. It's still going to mess up, however, and there's this whole idea behind like prompt engineering. I don't like to call it prompt engineering because it's just like giving better instructions. But now what you can do is, aside from fine-tuning models and improving the model with your own data, you can use techniques to have the machine automatically find the best prompt. You have to have data, and that's like a new thing. So now you have a data and a task. It's like, give me the best prompt that where the results are the best here for my data set, right? So there's a framework called DSPY that you can use to do this. You can do it for all kinds of stuff, but mostly it's like auto-tuning prompts. And it's also, you can do a whole bunch of stuff. You can make like AI building blocks with it to do like agents and all kinds of fancy things. I won't get into that, but there are a lot of techniques where you can use an existing model, it's been trained, and then you can make it better through prompt tuning and your own private data supplied to it.
Yeah, so I'm using Midjourney, ChatGPT, and CoPivot. My question is, when you give it a prompt, and I use it to write business plans, so when I give it a very extensive prompt, is any of that contained or learning or helping the AI in any way? Does it provide new data?
Okay, so that's a great question. So all models are static. You train a model, and then that's the model. It's like software. So you have to update it and maintain it. So what they do is they take your prompt and then they fold it into their training data for the next version, right? So GPT 4.0, it's gone through several versions. There was a version in May, there's a version in August. So they're updating it with new data based on how people are using it. But a model does not update itself. There's no self-learning involved. You have to go take it through the training exercise. And training is very expensive for models of this size. So only very large companies can do it.
That comment came up to me because I was deleting, so on ChatGPT, which I use every day, multiple times a day. So once I got something done, like got the response I wanted, cut and paste it into Word document, I delete it. And
Oh, they still got it.
Don't do that.
They still got it. They have it. Read the terms of service for any service that you use. Read the terms of service. It's legalese and it's not fun. Heck, pass the terms of service into ChatGPT and say like, what are the risks here? And it'll highlight them for you. So yeah, be careful. The way that I work with models is I work with models that have terms of service that are very beneficial to businesses. ChatGPT actually has a wrapper provided by Azure, which is owned by Microsoft. Microsoft won't steal your data. People would be taking them to court like crazy. So Azure is a way to access GPT, but you can only access it through an API. You can't use like the chat function inside of Azure. It doesn't work like ChatGPT does. It's programmatic access. But the terms are much better. And you can also opt out from certain things. Like they scan your text to make sure that you're not putting in like hate speech and asking it how to build bombs and bad stuff. So they scan that every time. So you can opt out of that if you're a trusted entity. You can become a trusted entity with Azure. So there are different ways to go about this. And then there's also the open models. The open models that I listed, like Mistral is a good one. Llama models. You can like spin up your own GPU cluster, and then it's really expensive, but you can do that, and you can use the open models, and then it's purely contained in yourself. So there's no risk of leakage if you're doing it that way.
Okay. Because there is a lot of data that we put in when we're working with clients one-on-one to, put the business plan together, and sometimes we're using a lot of their personal data from their tax returns and things like that.
Yeah,
Revenue models, pricing models, all that stuff.
Don't put anything into ChatGPT that you wouldn't want on the public internet.
Yeah. Goes back to the IT question.
Yeah.
Just to add to that, like I work for a tech company in Silicon Valley, and we signed a partnership with OpenAI, so we upload like private data, but we keep that private for us.
Really quick, do you think there are any models that you value this like paying a subscription for? There's a lot of different ones out there. You can pay for all of them. Are there any recommendations you have for models that you pay for that you find useful?
I pay for ChatGPT, and I pay for API access through Azure, and I've tested out with some other APIs. I don't have a paid subscription to Claude, but I use Claude. I don't have a paid subscription to Gemini, but I use Gemini for testing and figuring stuff out. I would like to be able to use the APIs for Claude, but their terms suck, and I can't use them. I won't give private data to models unless I'm interested. I'm very, very picky about that.
Right. The news tells me that AI is going to take over the world, and I'm really curious your feelings and thoughts about whether or not ChatGPT can become an AGI, whether or not an AGI is real, and if I'm going to use all of my things.
Oh boy, how much time do we have? So I actually came up with this rubric called, which was like the 5 levels of AI. I came up with this in like early 2023. There's 5 levels of getting to the AGI. I'm not going to talk about that in depth, but basically I drew a line at like the hardness of AGI. You branch into like the social interactions that people have. And some of the things like, close this house for me. I want to buy a house. I don't want to deal with any of this nonsense. Close the house. I have the money. Just do it. Just do it, AI. So you can't do that because it's a negotiation, and now you have 2 parties and there are very complex social interactions. And if you trust an AI to delegate all that to you, the AI could very easily be convinced to be not in your favor. So that's a huge barrier. Other things are just the limitations of it knows what it knows in the model. And I don't like to use anthropomorphization. I don't like to say it knows something. It's been trained on data, right? So new stuff that happens, let's say you say, okay, I have this business, I have a startup. Carolyn wants to offer a new feature like, startup, make money. Just go do it. AI, make money for the business. Just do it, right? So it can't do that. And I don't think it will be able to do that for a long time, right? Because it's super complicated, and the way that we deal with other people and the way that we navigate the world, I don't see this happening. Maybe like in some way on the internet there becomes like this, thing that I won't call it AGI, but it fakes it well enough to be able to be convincing enough so that it's not worth using the internet in its current form anymore, because then it's just like, well, it's just bots everywhere, and like, it's like that now, actually. I try to stay away from social media because that's going on. So I think that what we're seeing is a lot of like ourselves messing everything up instead of like the model. People always make mistakes. It's not the models. It's the way that people operate them, and that's why I'm big on accountability and how these things are being used. But like some super intelligence rising up from the code, I don't believe in it. I don't know.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So, is there, in your opinion, is there an appropriate level of regulation that governments should be imposing, or do you want to see this you know, kind of unfurled and just see where it goes.
I think
Just go with it.
As long as ChatGPT knows that I will bend the knee to it, so you know, I'll succumb to the AI overlords, but
I don't think there should be regulation on how models are built. I'm an innovator, you know, I'm a technologist. I believe in open development and being able to do whatever you can with the tools available. As long as there's no provable harm being done to another individual. And as long as you're not using, I think that the way that the content thing is shaking out, where anybody can use anybody's content, I'm not really on board with that. I don't like the grand theft of content that's taking place by Microsoft, OpenAI, Facebook, and a lot of other teams that are building models. I'm not really down with that. So it's unfortunate because the courts aren't really going to do anything about that right now. There was a big class action suit by teams against GitHub CoPilot, which is a code writing assistant. A lot of their claims were dismissed, even though Microsoft just mass thefted all of everybody's code that was on GitHub. I didn't think that was cool. In terms of regulation of what you're allowed to build, no, absolutely.
They wouldn't be able to regulate that anyway. There's just no regulate. But the big question is intellectual property.
Yeah.
What you create, are you going to own it? How are the laws going to be able to manage intellectual property ownership?
Well, the FTC has declared that anything, well, the current FTC has declared that anything that is generated by a model is public domain.
Right.
So there is no copyright. You cannot copyright generated output.
But if they were to regulate anything regarding something related to intellectual property, they can't.
I think there needs to be stronger regulation about using source data that doesn't have, that you don't have access to. And there is still some cases going on. There's a big one with the New York Times and OpenAI. It's going to go on for a little while. There are a couple others. There's one by Sarah Silverman, the comedian. She wrote a book, and some of her content showed up in an output. And they were like, well, you weren't allowed to use this in your training data, but it got in there, so what's going on? Right. So yeah, there's that case. There's also interesting cases of libel. There was a journalist, and AI said some very bad things about him that wasn't true. So I don't know how that shook out, but that was like a year and a half ago. So there's that type of stuff. There's this accountability question, which is very interesting to me. Is a company accountable? And then there's like all this, we're just talking about text and pictures here, right? There's Waymo and Tesla have self-driving. What's the accountability for AI driving the car and crashing into somebody's house or killing somebody, something like that? So is the company that created the model accountable to that? And I don't think there's an answer there. I think the regulation in California is shaking out not to be, no, they're not accountable. But I don't know how that's going to change. So there's a lot of interesting stuff to follow in the courts and see how that shakes out.
Yeah, it's kind of a good lead into the ones. So you have so many people say, "Well, AI lies." It's like, no, it doesn't. It's correct me if I'm wrong. It's like it gives you the answer based on the data it has and what you're having to look at.
Yeah. So a lot of people say it's like there are probabilities. Like it's just probabilities. Yeah. I don't like that because it's more complex. Really, a model is billions of parameters, and the parameters are learned to shape the output. So, and there are a lot of non-linearities in there. So, yeah.
And the other reality is not like people weren't reading stuff on social media and taking it as being true before AI was there. It's like AI just made it easier to get people to believe something.
Yeah, and there's this term, and when I had the slide on hallucinations, and I put it in quotes. Yeah. Hallucination is a human term, right? I can hallucinate something. I don't like giving human qualities to models. It's software. Yeah. So I like saying that it has bugs. And it doesn't lie. It has a bug. Right? It has a defect.
It's just
AI
is just another
doing
tool.
what it does. It's not lying. There's no intent.
Yeah.
There's no intent. There's no human qualities behind this. So it's just outputting what it's outputting.
Yeah,
Yes.
the reality is it's like we're nowhere close to cognitive thinking.
Right.
You know, like companies can't embrace AI because of the human limitations. How do you foresee non-tech enthusiasts adapting it because they have to verify the responses for correctness?
That's a really tough question because, you know, people don't verify human stuff right now. People see, you know,
Yeah, like what I
I
was just
don't
saying.
want to go down any areas of conversation here, but there are certain people who just say whatever they want and people believe it. So, I mean, there's no, it feels like all that
protect your
talking.
dogs and
So it feels like everybody for themselves, right? You believe what you believe and you interpret what you interpret. And I don't see people fact checking AI because people don't fact check people. So,
But that means you can't really like truly like use it within your workforce or your workplace where I can't be like,
right.
how can I help this improve my job and make my job easier because John, who I work with, doesn't trust AI because he tried it once and it gave him a bad answer.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have a product that there was a slide up there for half a second. And I process contracts. I process contracts and I summarize them. Contracts that are 100 pages. Some people read them because it's their job and they have to understand it and they have to know every detail. Like if you're a lawyer, you have to know every detail in the contract. Lawyer won't use AI to summarize it. But if it's your job to like do a financial calculation and you got to pull some numbers out of the contract, well, I have software that helps with doing stuff like that, right? But it pulls it out and then it says like in review. It goes through an in review status. So then it puts it there and it is your job and you have to sign a form on my software that says, I believe this to be accurate to the best of my knowledge, right? And I have to check this form and I have to sign it. And then there is a signature that says, hey, this person verified, right? So you have to put processes like that into software when you're talking about business functions that are vitally important.
But I mean, on the same token,
Eric, if anyone has any extra questions, if they can come see Carolyn and CoPivot or MARCIE or Max for AI questions, that would be wonderful, just so we can break out and get everyone coming on the time.
Ask all the
Something
specific
when
needs.
Carolyn had her slide up for the Venn diagram, and it said that one of them was not a fit for the market,
Yeah.
and the other was cash flow, undercapitalized, right? I gave those numbers, 42% of businesses that fail because it's not a fit. No customer discovery done, it's not a fit. And then the other 29% on the other side was undercapitalization. So you could add that to yourself.
Oh, I have a different
And those
slide.
numbers are from the Research
I
Foundation
simplified
and all
today.
that. Because I just did a presentation this morning on customer discovery and I was talking about failures and, you know, the importance of customer discovery. So
Thank you.
just thought I'd bring it out.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Yeah.